Hey, how's it going? This is Demias, Head of Client Development at SoftGreen Studio, and welcome to our first ever BuildCast, where we're going to show you behind the scenes of how we find and build out opportunities. And in today's cast, we're going to be showing you how we plan to go from 0 to 10 clients in only 1 month so that we can show you how we do our strategy, how we figure out our market research, how we find key decision makers, how we figure out who it is that we want to work with and what industries we think will be most impactful, and how we strategize our outreach in order to reach these people, find these deals, and make a real impact in the world. So to tell you a little bit more about who we are, SoftGreen Studio is a venture building studio that helps sustainability and social impact startups achieve global impact by building the strategies, systems, and teams that they need for massive growth. Basically, what this means is we want to be your partner and help you grow your business however we can. If you need strategy to help with sales, go to market, or marketing in general, that's our main focus, and we'd love to help you with that. But of course, after you have that strategy to actually put it in place, you need funding, you need talent. And so we also help startups to find the talent and the funding that they need in order to enact these strategies and be successful. So, what is our overall goal for this first session? So it's twofold. Our first and foremost goal, why we're showing you behind the scenes in the first place and telling you exactly what we do and showing you the process, is so that we can show founders, operators, and funders exactly how we work, how we think, what is our thought process behind research and outreach, and deciding which startups we should or should not work with. The second goal, of course, is to actually get these 10 clients. So this is going to be starting from completely scratch. We're not going to do any warm referrals. We're not going to rely on anybody who reaches out on LinkedIn to us first. This is going to be all cold outreach from start to finish. And showing you that complete process. So in a sense, there's no cheating, no getting a friend of a friend to sign a deal with me. It's going to be all cold outreach. So you're going to see exactly how we go from nothing, how we go from just an idea of who we want to work with or what type of impact we want to make, and then how we do the market research for that, how we take that market research and then we find the companies that we want to work with and we find the key decision makers that we need to talk to, and then how we create a sales system and sales messages and a sales tempo, a cadence in order to reach out to these people, get conversations going, and get deals done. So today's agenda is to find the 10 promising startups that we'd like to contact. So in this episode, we're just going to be focusing on the market outreach or the market research aspect of it, and then the lead list building aspect of it. So firstly is just figuring out what industry it is that we want to work with, who we want to work with, and how can we find these people? How can we contact them? And how can we create messaging that's interesting to them? So what are the parts of this process? Like I said, the first one is to understand the market, understand who it is that buys these products, who uses these products, who makes decisions about these products, and understanding that when somebody buys something, they're really hiring that product or service to do a job for them. If they're trying to overcome something, there's something that they want to get done, and they need a tool or they need a person or they need a service to get it done for them. So whenever somebody's purchasing something, whenever you're making a business, the core thing that you're doing is solving a problem for somebody. And if you keep that in mind, it makes business a whole lot easier for you. Instead of thinking about what can I build, think first about what problems do people need solved? How are they solving those problems now? And how can those be improved? The next thing would be identifying promising opportunities. It helps to spell it correctly. So after you do the market research and we have a little bit of an understanding of who it is that we want to reach out to, how we want to reach out to them, what their problem is, what it is that they're trying to solve, what solutions exist, how are different people creating solutions and offering solutions and creating value propositions to solve those problems. And then we're going to start the outreach. We're going to create the actual sales messaging and reach out to people through call, through email, through LinkedIn. But we're going to get into the details of all of that a little later. So for right now, just to stay focused, we're going to focus on the market outreach section. So what even is the purpose of market outreach or market research? Why is it that you want to do market research before you start a business or before you start a new venture? It's because information is everything. You don't want to just jump into business, throwing money into something that's unproven. You don't know if anybody even has this problem. You have no way of figuring out if they do have that problem. You don't have any understanding of why people are picking certain solutions. You're kind of going into it blind, and you're going to waste a lot of money that way trying to figure out what to do after you've already built something, when you should have just figured out what are the problems, what are the opportunities first, and then built something out from that. So the purpose of market research, in my opinion, is to understand why buyers buy and why sellers sell, to figure out what opportunity gaps exist, how you can fill them, and if it's worth filling them with the current capabilities and resources that you have. So to do that, you have to ask questions. Doing market research is like being an investigator. It's like being a detective trying to get to the bottom of what it is that's going on in the market, why people are making decisions, figuring out what the clues are and how you can piece them together to figure out where you are in the overall puzzle and the overall map of things. So when we're doing that, we want to focus on certain questions. And the questions, the main four questions are what problems need to be solved, figuring out what exists in the market, what problems are people having, what is causing them to act to overcome those problems. The second one is what solutions are available, who exist already, and what unique ways are they trying to solve that problem. And sometimes they're trying to solve it in a way that's not unique. Sometimes you have a market where all the products are more or less the same. And so the question is, how are they differentiating themselves from everybody else? The third thing is who are the key actors? So once you know what the solution space looks like, next, you need to know what are the businesses working at that space, who's investing in that space, what people are constantly working in that space. Their names are always popping up when there are conversations around these industries and around these topics. And the last thing that you need for market research that's oftentimes overlooked by people is who are you? Who is your company? What are your capabilities? What are you capable of doing? What is it that you want to do? What is it that your investors want to do? And why would consumers choose you instead of the other competitors that exist in the market? And sometimes that's something as simple as, well, we're the only one who does it in our town or in our city. We're the closest one, and there aren't really any competitors around, so that's why they choose us. But other times it could be something much more subtle. An example that I like to tell people about is the difference between Snicker bars and Milky Ways. So a lot of people would think that those things directly compete with each other because they're both chocolate candy bars. But when you really dig down into why people choose one, they choose the Milky Way because it's a candy bar, because it's chocolatey, because they want to fill a sweet tooth. But people choose Snicker bars for a completely different reason. Snicker bars act more as a meal replacement. People buy those because they want something quick, easy, not messy to hold them over until later. And so knowing who you are, knowing what the market is, knowing what problems people are really trying to solve, All of those give you clues as to how you should move in the market, how you should make decisions, and how you should deploy capital and talent in certain areas, and in certain ventures. So, diving deep into some of these questions, with what problems need to be solved, like I said, the first and foremost question is what drives consumers to seek a solution in the first place? So, there are two different types of problems that people can have: a problem they care about and a problem they don't really care about. And it's your job as a founder, as an investor, to differentiate between those two things, because there are a lot of problems that people will talk about, but when it's time to actually do something about it, when it's time to actually put money on the line, they're unwilling to. And so if you really push the subject, if you really push them on it, and you say, well, if it's such a problem, why haven't you done anything about it? It's because they don't really care enough to. They're not willing to invest that time. They're not willing to invest that money into figuring out how to do it better. So those are problems in mind. But to be a good business, you have to be solving real problems, problems that people are willing to give time, give money, and give effort into. The second question is, what is the scale of the problem? How many people are actually affected by it? How are they affected? And how much are people willing to do to overcome that problem? So with the second question, what solutions are available? Why are certain solutions being offered? So sometimes you come into a industry, you come into a business and you have an idea of, oh, why aren't people doing it this way? Everybody must be, dumb in a sense because they're not choosing the obvious solution. But when you really dig deep into what the solutions are and what the different drawbacks of different solutions are, you will see that it can be much more nuanced, it can be much more complex. So part of your job isn't just to understand what solutions exist. It's to understand, why is the business offering that solution in that way? Why are they using a subscription service? Or why are they selling it as an annual contract? Or why are they using this type of framing and this type of language to sell it? Um, the second question is, what are the key changes that shaped the industry? So for each industry, no matter which one you pick, there's going to be a certain evolution that happens as that industry grows and evolves throughout time, as new technologies and new methods uh, come into prominence. So you're So when you're doing your market research, you also want to make yourself familiar with the history of the industry and figure out what were the paradigm shifts that occurred for us to be here. Even for something like energy or locomotion, let's say. So you started off with steam powered trains. Let's go with that as an example. So you start off actually with charcoal as the thing that's driving your steam train, and then they switched over to diesel, and then they switched to electric, and then they switched to the electric magnetic ones that they have like in Japan and in China and different places. And all of those represent paradigm shifts in the industry where they completely changed the way that they did business, that they built their infrastructure. And each one of those changes tells you something about what are the constraints, what is the state of mind of that industry. And the last thing that you want in that question bracket is, how well do the current solutions solve the problem? So is it a solution where once people buy it, they basically never think about that problem again? Or are they putting together two or three things that sort of work in order to have some sort of solution? Because that sort of thing matters. If there's already a complete solution that exists. It's very hard for you to get into the market with something new, mostly because people just don't need it. There's already something that exists that completely solves the problem. But if people are putting together almost half measures in order to get the job done, then that tells you that there are gaps, there are opportunities, there's dissatisfaction in the market and with the current solutions. So the next thing is, who are the key actors? So with this question, you really want to be asking yourself, who are the main shakers and movers in this industry? Who decides where money is going, what people are paying attention to, what's being bought, what's being sold, and what ideas are going into the collective conscious about this industry? So you'd ask things like, what businesses are working on this? What is their unique selling proposition? What is their market share? Or how fragmented is the market? Is it a market where one person makes up 80% of all of the market? Or is it something where it's kind of just thousands or hundreds of mom and pop shops that are all competing for their own little share of the market? Another question would be, who is investing in this industry? Because a lot of times the investment, how people invest, how people choose to invest in these companies and at what stages dictates how the businesses themselves build, how they operate, because you want to operate in a way where you're attractive to capital, where you're attractive to investors. So how investors see and want to do deals, especially if they're spending hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars to promote and grow this industry, uh, how the investors want the deals to be done will dictate how the businesses build and position themselves in order to be attractive to investors. So knowing who the investor is in this space, how they like to structure their deals, and how they like to find investments, how they like to work with companies is also going to be important. Lastly, who are you? What is your company? What do you do? What makes you unique? What makes you different from your competitors? Why do your customers choose you instead of all the other competitors that exist or that appear to exist in your mind? Like with the example earlier with the Snickers and the Milky Way bars, if you were the Snickers CEO, and you didn't know better, you didn't talk to your customers, you didn't spend time figuring out why it is they buy your product in the first place, you would think that you're competing with the Milky Ways, that you're competing with the Kit Kats and the Reese's bars. But once you take time to actually talk to your customers, see why and when they're buying your product and why they're choosing your product at certain times, you can get a better understanding of where it is you stand in the market. And you can understand that, okay, as a Snickers bar, we're not really competing with these other candies, even though that's where we're sold. We're competing with the hamburger, with the milkshake, with the banana that they could have grabbed from the house before they left. So after the market research section, we're going to go into building out the lead list. This part is a whole lot simpler. Basically, once you understand all the parts before and you understand the industry, we're just going to go into, all right, well, let's figure out what is the actual company structure. Who are the people who handle different types of silos, different types of maternal structures within these businesses? Who are these key decision makers and how can we reach out to them? Is there a phone number? Is there an email that we could call? Is there a LinkedIn account? Um, but also figuring out who are the end users, who makes the choices, where do they hang out? Do they have social media? What type of marketing materials do they put out? How can we find out more information about these decision makers and make it easier on ourselves to make that first contact with them and really get the conversation going and flowing? so that we can tell them more about ourselves, learn more about their businesses, and figure out how we can work together and get a deal done. The last thing that we're going to go over is sales outreach, the different steps and how you come up with a sales flow that works for you, a sales cadence that works for you, that allows you to stay on top of reaching out to different people, without reaching out too much, without becoming annoying, but also making sure you're following up and not letting any deals fall to the wayside just because you spent too much time not knowing about them. And we're also going to go into the idea of what is media. So I guess really we can just go into that now. So what is media and what does it mean to communicate an idea? And once again, it helps if you have proper grammar. So what is the media? So we have different types of media. We have print media, we have digital media like Instagram, we have TikTok, we have YouTube videos, we have magazines, newspapers. And so if you want to go over how media has evolved, it started first with word to word communication, cavemen making noises, banging drums in order to communicate with each other. And then we went on to cave paintings, and that's how we communicated ideas to each other. And then over time, as we progressed and we industrialized, we got things like poster culture. Then we evolved into radio, and then we evolved into TV and the what they would call the golden age of advertisements when TV first became a thing, and then we started to get commercials. And then that went on as we started to get the internet, and then of course banner ads, pop-ups, and it continuously evolves upwards. But what is the thing that's the same throughout time? It's the people. All media, all communication at the end of the day is about taking an idea that you have and transferring it to another person in a way that they understand. So no matter what type of media you're using, whether it's social media, whether you're making TikTok videos, YouTube videos, whether you're putting up flyers in magazines, at the end of the day, the media itself is the same. You're going from brain to brain with message. The only thing that's changing is the channel that you're using. And so you want to change your messaging to match that channel to what people expect. That way you can better communicate your idea from yourself to them. So at the end of the day, to keep it very simple, that's my thoughts on media and communication. A lot of people make it more complex than it needs to be. Um, Mostly because they're trying to sell you something. They're trying to sell you the next hottest thing. They're trying to sell you on how great TikTok ads are, but TikTok is just another form of media, just another way for you to communicate from one person to another. Of course, you're going to change how you structure your message based off of that channel. But at the end of the day, the thing to keep in mind is how can I create my message in a way that it resonates with other people, that it catches their attention, that they can understand the idea that I'm trying to communicate with them, and hopefully move them towards action. Um, and so quickly, just the steps that I have for the sales outreach process. A lot of people have like 5, 6, 7, 14 step programs. But to keep it simple, you have pre-contact, post-contact, and post-sale. Pre-contact is when you're creating your message, when you're trying to figure out who you're talking to, when you're sending your first couple of messages, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's email, whether it's a cold call, a DM on Instagram, whatever it is. Pre-contact is the stage where you're trying to figure out who they are and create a message that resonates with them to get the conversation going. After they respond to you, after they actually say something back, whether it's on the first email or the 20th DM, you're now in post contact. That's when you have your chance to really communicate who you are. But more importantly, at this step, you're trying to figure out who they are. and what they need, what capabilities they have, what goals they have, and see if what you do and what they do match with each other. So in the pre-contact stage, it's mostly about you, um, about figuring out who they are, but only enough to get the conversation going. In the post-contact stage, it's mostly about them figuring out who they are. Now that you have the conversation going, you want them to be doing most of the talking, so that you can figure out more about their business, what they plan on doing with it, and seeing if you can actually help them with that. After that, you have post-sale. So after you contact them, after they know who you are, after you know who they are, and after you've pitched them on some sort of solution with a price tag attached to it, either they say yes or they say no, and now you're in post-sale. If they said yes, it's not the end of the line, of course, because now they're a client, which is what you wanted in the first place. But any good company knows that it's not about getting them in the door, it's about keeping them in there once you have them. It's much cheaper to keep a customer that you already have compared to finding new customers. So if you only focus on the front end of bringing customers in, and you have a bunch coming in, but you're not building the other half of, okay, well, how do we make sure that we're solving the problem that we set out to? How do we make sure that they're satisfied with the solution that we give them? How can we iterate on that product to make it better for them? If you don't have that in place, you're basically just going to be burning cash because you're going to be good at getting people interested in your business, interested in what you do, but you're not going to have a way to actually keep them there. And in the business world, if you're attracting people, if you're taking money from them, but you're not actually solving a problem, you're a scammer. Plain and simple. Um, so at the end of the day, to really be a business, you have to have a real solution. And if you have a real solution, then congratulations. You know, keeping your customers is not going to be a problem because you're going to be solving the problem that they have and making a real impact in their lives. But if you don't really have a solution, if you're not really solving a real problem, um, it's up to you to figure that out, figure out how to pivot your solution so that it actually does solve that problem, or to shut down your business if there's no roadway for you to actually be able to accomplish that, so that you're not wasting people's time, you're not wasting consumers' money, you're not wasting investor money, and you're not wasting time and talent that could be better served somewhere else. So that's basically a quick overview of what it is that we plan to do on this build stream, how we plan to go from 0 to 10 clients in this month, and how we plan to go about doing market research in a systematic way, how we plan to find the key decision makers that we're looking for and get those conversations going, and how we plan to provide solutions to people so that we can actually help them to build their businesses, achieve impact, and grow their revenue. Because at the end of the day, like I said, what we specialize in is the go-to market, is helping you come up with that strategy and doing exactly what I'm doing now, but for your business, figuring out how can we find out who our consumers are, how can we find out what our problems are, and how can we build our business in order to bring those problems and solutions together to continuously and systematically attract customers and to satisfy them with the solutions that we provide so that we can continue to build our customer base and build our business.